like, well, it's not my fault that you were never honest with her about your feelings. And then he ends up calling Billy a coward. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to continue on with my recap of Netflix series The Irregulars, Season 1, Episode 3, Ipsissimus. Okay, so the episode opens, obviously it picks up where Episode 2 left off, where B met Mycroft. And so, of course, you know, she's trying to figure out like who he is and what, you know, what he wants with them. And he ends up saying, you know, basically it's good to see, finally meet you. You know, I've been talking to Dr. Watson. I'm glad that he's been passing my messages along.
I've been reaching out to Watson to make your acquaintance for several days.
Yeah, she basically told him no. So he'd been wanting to meet her, but Dr. Watson has, for some reason, not allowed that to happen. And so he's, you know, started asking him questions, and he went into, you know, his association with the Golden Dawn.
It's a group of people who have an interest in the paranormal.
How each chapter has a leader called a Magnus, M-A-G-N-U-S, and how their leader, Richard Wynn, was basically murdered. And so while he's, you know, going into this story, it's kind of flashing back and forth. You can kind of see that he's, you know, having some issues because he's flashing back on when the body was discovered, which was in a very gruesome manner. And then he asked her, you know, how much she knows about tarot, and he explained, you know, the reason why he was asking was because the leader, Richard, the way his body was positioned, it was positioned exactly the way one of the tarot cards is designed. And so, basically, he wants them to come to the house. He wants her and Jesse to pose as his niece and kind of help him investigate like what happened, like who's, you know, and who in their group, because the way the group is set up, there's like a handful of people that comprise the inner circle. And so when the Magnus dies, the new leader is picked from that group. And so they're having a meeting, obviously, because of the death, because they need to make a decision on who's going to be the next leader. And he wants them to come and help him investigate to try to determine who was responsible for the murder. So the next scene, you can see Leo, he's in the cellar, and you can see he's kind of getting himself together, like he's stayed the night there. And so he's walking out. He walked out onto the alley, and he can kind of see, you know, the hustle and bustle. The people are just going about their day. Some people are just hanging around talking. It's more excitement than he's used to being cooped up in the palace all day. And so he saw Spike, B, and Jesse sitting off to the side, and as he was about to walk over in that direction, of course, Billy walked up, and because at this point Billy don't trust him, and obviously there's also some jealousy there, some competition for B's affection. And he basically told him that he wanted him to stay away from B, and that, you know, and the reason why, because Leo asked, well, why are you saying that? And he basically told him that he was a liar. He felt that he was a liar, and that he's keeping things from them, and da-da-da-da.
Why would you want me to do that? Because you're the type of person who lies and uses people, and I don't let people hurt my friends.
And so Leo basically told him that you don't have the right to tell me, you know, who I can talk to, who I can't. A whole altercation was about to happen. Spike ends up walking up to defuse the situation. So the meeting takes place at Mycroft's home it's called Woodlands Estates. And so they all arrive, and Spike, of course, is the one saying, you know what, you know, I don't really think it's a good idea for us to stay in a place where somebody was murdered, and, you know, people getting killed, and, you know, and B made this comment that, you know, we're not only here to help investigate the murder, this is where Charlotte grew up, and so maybe if we could find out, maybe this will help us find out what exactly is going on. So as they approached the house, Mr. Bannister and Isabel walked out. Mr. Bannister, obviously he runs the house, and Isabel is one of the servants. And so he basically told them that, you know, Isabel's going to take care of Jesse and B. And then, of course, Billy, he really didn't like to being referred to as basically the help.
They're under the impression you're a few grunts we've hired for the weekend.
Oh?
So Jesse and obviously B is going to pose as Denise, and Billy, Spike, and Leo are going to be doing the grunt work. They're going to be doing, you know, the heavy lifting, right? Which is going to be a change for Billy as somebody who's going from being waited on hand and foot to now having to do manual labor. So, yeah, there's that. And so what's funny when you see the contrast between the girls, you know, well, not the girls, the young women, they're in this like decked out room on this estate. Obviously, they're not used to such plush surroundings. And then you contrast that with the guys in the cellar shoveling coal. So that was funny. So Leo was shoveling coal, and you can see he was visibly struggling. And Billy walked in. And, you know, Billy, he didn't really say too much, but you could, Leo, I mean, he know how Billy feels about him. He really don't care too much for him. And so Leo was like, so are you going to tell them about my illness?
So I suppose you're going to tell everyone about my ailments?
And he said, why would you say that? He said, well, Leo's version that was like, well, to humiliate me. And Billy was basically like, it's not my style. It's not my fault, like, that you're pathetic or something to that effect.
Just because you're a pathetic twat doesn't mean everyone else is.
And he basically, reiterated that, he wanted him to stay away from B. And as he turned to walk out, Leo was like, well, it's not my fault that you were never honest with her about your feelings.
It's not my fault you never told her that you love her, Billy.
And then he ends up calling Billy a coward, which of course said, didn't sit right with him. So he turned around and basically told him that if he disrespected him again, that it's going to be troubles. And he turned around and he walked out. So B and Jesse have now changed. They're heading down the stairs just as Billy was walking up with the coal for the fireplace. And of course he, was kind of mesmerized seeing B all decked out in this dress and, all looking all feminine and ladylike. But I mean, it wasn't so much that she looked feminine and ladylike because he's in love with her for who she is. But I mean, I can imagine seeing her that way was a shock to the system. They spoke and they kept on going because they had to meet with Mycroft in the room where they're having the meeting. And so of course Mycroft, he wanted them there so they can have, so they could survey the room. He pretty much told them who these people were. And I think the first person was Alan Crawley. The second person was RP Breakwater. The next person was Dion Cross. Then there was Gustav Felkin. And then there was Patricia Jones. And so these are the 5 people that comprise, along with Mycroft, that comprise the inner circle. And so the next leader is going to be chosen from this group. And so he, and another thing he wanted to introduce them is because he know that they're unfamiliar faces. And so having them around the estate would probably draw, some suspicion. So he said, they're not going to be privy or part of any basically the goings on, but I just wanted to let their presence be known that they're here and they're just visiting. And so, they were gracious and then they left the room. So as they left the room, Mr. Bannister was on the outside and he closed the door and basically showed them where they have this secret kind of door that you could they could open and they can eavesdrop. They can see and hear what's going on. So now they're kind of standing on the outside of the room, taking note of what's going on. Okay, so no sooner than they left the room, Alan Crawley, the first guy, threw his hat in the ring, basically said that, when are we going to have a vote on the next leader?
When will we vote for the next majors?
And he said that he wanted to throw his hat in the ring. So of course, everybody else chimed in and was like, well, you know, I'm throwing my head in, da, da, da. So everybody is, you know, kind of reaching for this, you know, this coveted position.
I'd like to put myself.
I believe
My claim is greater.
So while this is going on, Spike is in the kitchen helping Mrs. Brown. And then he started talking. Initially, she didn't want to say too much, but she did tell him that there was a falling out between Mycroft and Sherlock some 15 years ago. How, you know, from time to time, he'll give her an update on what's going on with him, and how, you know, she missed having him around the house, Sherlock. And how, you know, but the last time he was there, you know, he was in the attic, and he had put something up there. And so, of course, now Spike is trying to make his way to the attic to see what he can find out. So in the end, you know, they decided to go forth and have the ceremony. And so the first two people who kind of walked up were Mycroft and Patricia Jones. And he had put some kind of band or something on her forehead, and she had placed some mask, a headrest, something on him. Okay, so at this point, it's flashing back and forth between the ceremony and Spike and Leo. So Spike and Leo has made their way to the attic. They're kind of looking around to see if they can see anything, I guess, out of the ordinary. And eventually they find this ladder with this, what looks like a smaller door. And so it's flashback to the ceremony, and the new Magnus has been chosen. It is Gustav Falcon.
Gustav Falcon.
So they kind of looking around, but you know, it is what it is. And so now they are making their offering. So they all stand in a circle. It's like a pentagram or something. Each standing on each of them are standing at a corner, a point. And they're disrobing and making their offering. And so what's so funny, the reason this is so funny, but it tickled me because RP Breakwater was so extra, right? The way he disrobed, I just thought, I don't know why that tickled me.
Myself to the stars.
And then, of course, B and Jess are on the outside. And they kind of, they had never seen a naked man before. Now, he was naked from behind, so they only saw his behind. But you can still, it was enough to make them blush, right? Or at least make Jesse blush. So, back in the attic, Spike and Leo, Spike ends up climbing the ladder and finding, you know, he was able to open the door, and he ends up finding this box. And it wasn't like a regular lock box. It had, and there was a code to unlock the box, and there was some inscription on there. And Leo was able to read it out loud. He was able to make out the inscription and decipher it, and it was something interesting.
I'm more foul than the devil.
So later that night, Jesse and B are in their room. Of course, Jesse's going on and on about the goings on, you know, what happened that night, and she's kind of teasing B about, oh my, it must be so hard to have two good-looking guys, fighting over you or something to that effect. And of course, B is, pretending to be unmoved by it and unfazed. And the next thing you know, you hear a scream. Of course, the entire house go in to see what in the world is going on, and you see Gustav Falcon dead with 9 swords around him. So the next scene, you saw all of them all packed up. Well, the B, Jesse, Leo, Billy, and Spike, and they are headed to the gate. So as they're walking, they realize that something is off. So you can kind of see in one scene they're walking away from the house, and then they stop, and then they flash to what they're actually looking at, and it's the house. So they're like, okay, wait a minute, what's going on? They were walking from the house, and now they're walking towards the house. And so it seemed like no matter which direction they went, it always took them to the same path that led to the house. And so Leo, after looking at the tarot cards, and I don't remember how he even got tarot cards. He basically said that this is the symbol for the way Gustav Falcon's body was laid out. It was a symbol of captivity or something to that effect.
The body just now, it was posed as the 8 of Swords. That card means captivity.
Okay, so whatever's going on there, they ain't leaving anytime soon. So of course, obviously, they end up going back to the house. So Dion was the first to say, okay, who are these? They're asking Mycroft, like, who are these people? And Mycroft ends up telling them who they are and why they were there. And of course they, initially dismissed them. And then you saw Crowley. He went to the window and he noticed that something was off. The clock was saying one thing, but the stars was giving a different time. And so Leo was like, okay, so he's right. So we're not only stuck in place, it looks like we're stuck in time.
The incantation has not just trapped us in place, but in time.
And so now they're realizing that there's somebody there working some juju, and they're trying to figure out why that is. So B has decided that they're going to kind of separate and interview all of the inner circle. And so before this happens, B was off to herself in the room, and Billy arrived, and they started talking. And I guess this was the first time he was able to thank her for basically saving his life with the Tooth Fairy.
I never got a chance to thank you.
And she, basically, told him that basically he didn't have to thank her, that, this is what we do. We protect each other. And he acknowledged that, you did something that that you're struggling with, and he wanted to acknowledge that, and he thanked her for it.
No, you did something you knew would haunt you.
And then they started talking, and he, went into how, he likes to see her happy, and he likes it when she smiles, and he just doesn't want their lives to be about all the bad stuff that's happened to them. And
I don't like seeing you like this, B. I like it when you laugh.
She tells him that, it's not just about the bad things, it's about the good things too. And, basically saying that they were family.
Well, the story's not just about that. Well, like family almost, hasn't it?
And, before they can continue, Mrs. Brown walked in and she brought in a tray, with tea and refreshments, I guess before they started interviewing the folks. So the first person they interviewed was Patricia Jones, and she admitted that she didn't go to bed, when everybody else went to bed, that she actually was sitting up having a drink with Mrs. Brown.
I stayed up with Mrs. Brown.
What were you doing?
Drinking.
But she did acknowledge that when she did head to her room later that night, that she saw RP Breakwater sneaking around. So now they're trying to hunt him down to find out where he is, to figure out, okay, well, why were you creeping around his house late in the wee hours of the night? So Leo is still in the attic. He's still trying to open this box, and B walked in. Of course, they talked and joked, just banter back and forth. And then, after looking at the box, she was able to help him decipher the code, and they were able to open the box, in which they found this book. So Jesse and Spike are in, I guess, the dining room. Crowley is reading tarot, and so Dion and Mycroft was there. And something happened that made Jessie touch the cards, and at the same time she touched Crowley's hand, and she was able to tell him that how he stole those cards from his dad.
He stole this tarot deck.
And then, they started getting all excited. Dion and them started getting all excited. Like, oh, she's a true one. She's a real psychic. And then they end up seeing the butterfly, a tattoo on her wrist that the guy from Louisiana gave her to help her with her nightmares. And that's when they started calling her an Ipsissimus. Don't come for me. I'm probably saying that wrong. And of course, Spike is like, okay, well, what is that? And Dion was like, that's a real psychic.
What's an Ipsissimus?
An Ipsissimus is a true psychic.
So now they're all excited. They're trying to get her to join the Golden Dawn and, be a part of the inner circle, and how they can do great things. And of course, she's like, I don't even want this power. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be bothered. Leave me alone. she ends up running off, and of course Spike takes off after her. So at this point, everybody's looking for Jesse, with the exception of Leo and B. And RP Breakwater is now in Jesse and B's room. He's looking for her, and Billy appeared out of nowhere, and he's asking him, well, what are you doing in here? And he said, well, I'm helping looking for Jesse. He was like, okay, so... And then he started, took the time to ask him, okay, so what were you doing sneaking around the house at night? And his response was basically, if I tell you, then they can't leave the room. So he made Billy promise not to repeat whatever it was that he told him.
If I tell you, you must swear that it goes no further.
So then we flash to Spike. Spike goes up to the attic where Leo and B is, and this is when he informs them that Jesse is missing. And he ends up saying that they freaked her out. They called her he called her a Ipsissimus, hippopotamus. He called her something crazy. And right off the back, Leo was like, you mean an Ipsissimus? I know I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Ipsissimus. Yeah, that was it.
And I'm looking like, how'd you get that? What's up with you, with Leo? But then he said that, through reading through the book, he was able, it was mentioned in the book, it basically described what they were and how people will use them and how people are able to take their powers and basically do whatever it is that they want from them.
And Ipsissimus's powers can be taken from them by sacrificing them using ritualistic magic.
And so now they realize that it was a setup to get Jessie there so somebody there can take her powers. So Jessie has locked herself in a room. She thinks she's alone until she turns around and she sees Creepy Crawly there. And of course, he's trying to tell her that he's not going to hurt her. And
I've been looking for you everywhere.
He starts talking about her powers and how special she is, and how great, the great work that they could do together. And how he's obviously freaking her out, and she tries to run away. He grabbed her briefly, but then he did let her go. So I'm like, oh Lord, what's he about to do to her? So now they're trying to find RP Breakwater, I guess, to try to figure out, okay, what exactly is going on here. So they end up going into his room, and that's when they found Dion and RP Breakwater dead.
Jesus Christ.
The way they were staged, obviously meant something, and then they noticed like the blood droplets under their foot, like somebody was trying to write something in blood. And so initially, was it XP, or I can't remember exactly the initials, but B ends up asking Leo, because he still has the tarot cards, like, what does that mean? And so it was the card that had the devil on it. And so it was flashing between them and Jessie. So Jessie is now in some sort of trance. She can hear, she's having these auditory issues where somebody's whispering and calling her name, and she's now following this voice. Okay, and so when Leo told her that the XV meant devil, then she flashed back onto the ceremony when Patricia was putting that headrest on Mycroft, and she referred to him as the devil, which I guess was part of the whole ceremony.
The devil.
You are the devil for one time.
And so now she's like, okay, it's Mycroft. He set us up, and now they're on their way to find Mycroft. So they end up confronting Holmes, and he is confused, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And eventually he started talking about how he keeps secrets for a living, like he don't just blab and talk about what's going on. And then Spike jumps in and was like, well, Mrs. Brown said you talk to her from time to time. And Mycroft was like, well, yes, she's a trusted servant. She's like family, like she's been here for years.
Mrs. Brown said you give her updates about Sherlock?
Mrs. Brown is a trusted employee, like family.
And then they flashed back on when they interviewed Patricia Jones, when she talked about how she was up half the night drinking with Mrs. Brown. And how she found out things through Mrs. Brown that Mycroft had confided in her. So now they're like, okay, the whole time it's been Patricia Jones. So while they're coming to this conclusion, you see Jessie. At this point, Jessie has left the house and she's now walking across the estate to this. There's another building, a tower that she's on her way walking towards. And so as soon as she walks in, you see Patricia standing there and she's talking to Patricia about how beautiful she is and, you know, how much she loves her.
I love you.
But weird. And then Patricia, you know, says to her, basically asking her if she would do, if she would do anything for her. And of course, Jessie's like, yes. And she was like, would you die for me? And Jessie was like, yes.
Would you die for me?
Yes.
So around this time, all of her friends and her sister and Mycroft and Crawler, they all pour out of the house. They're running towards this building to prevent whatever's about to happen from happening. So Patricia ends up taking Jessie to the top of the building. She tells her to hold on to this post. This post is, I don't know if it's a way for her to siphon the power. It was a way for her, I guess, to siphon the power from Jessie, and I guess she would be able to transfer it to herself. So Jessie's now holding on to this pole. Patricia ends up saying this incantation.
Your powers would have been a curse to you, but to me they will be a blessing.
So at this point, the group, they're, getting very close to the building. Spike and Crawley runs in. The door closed behind them, locking Billy, Leo, and B out. And so Crawley ends up telling Spike to go on to help Jessie while he stays behind. He has this pistol. He's now about to shoot Patricia. Patricia's like, when it's all said and done, I'm going to have her power, and then I'm going to be an Ipsissimus. Please don't come for me about my pronunciation.
When the girl dies, I become an Ipsissimus.
And of course, he wasn't trying to let that happen. And so at this point, he's maneuvered his way over to the door. He's about to open the door. This is Crawley. And she says to him that when she has the power, then she's going to have the power to do, to do whatever it is that they need to do. And that he can share in this power. And so he went from going to open the door to now he's like, okay, this idea of having this power, seemed a more attractive offer. So we flash to the roof where Spike is now trying to get Jessie to let the pole go, but she's not trying to let it go because, like I said, she's in this trance, and she's saying no. Patricia told me not to let go, and so he's talking to her. He's really trying to, talk to her, to get through to her, and I think he ends up telling her that he loves her, and eventually she ends up letting go, and you still have Jessie and them on the outside, not Jessie, B, and them banging on the door trying to get in. And so Crawley and Patricia makes it to the roof. She see that Jessie is no longer holding the pole. She's telling her, I told you not to let go. You need to hold on to the pole. So now Jessie is still under her control to a certain extent. So now she's trying to go over to grab the pole again. Spike is trying to hold on to her. She's telling Crawley to shoot Spike. Crawley can't do it. She ends up taking the gun from Crawley, and as she was about to shoot them, Crawley ends up knocking her into the pole, which zaps her. So whatever power or whatever, that was there, almost knocked her off the building, ends up slamming her into the door. And then the sun comes out. So that was a lot. Okay, so the next day, Jessie and B are meeting with Mycroft, and he basically tells them like his real motives. Like he is not really part of the Golden Dawn. He works for an agency that investigates paranormal activity.
I'm the head of a governmental department that does extensive research into the paranormal.
And then you find out, how him and Holmes had the falling out. Initially, he said he needed somebody who understood, who can bridge the gap between magic and the supernatural, magic and science.
I needed someone to help who could bridge the gap between magic and science.
And that's where Holmes came in, but then he became obsessed. And he's basically saying that that's basically how he lost his brother. And Jesse ends up asking him if this has happened again. And he said, yeah, 15 years ago there was a rip. He's not sure how it happened or how it was closed.
There was another rip 15 years ago. I don't know how it opened or how it was closed.
But it also coincides with the time that him and Sherlock had the falling out. They didn't say that, but you know, like Miss Brown was saying, how it's been 15 years since Sherlock has been to the house. And then he tells him about Dr. Watson. He felt like Dr. Watson is the cause of a lot of his brother's, Sherlock's issues.
The doctor is a poison.
And he basically said that if there is another rip, that you can best believe that Watson is nearby. So the final scene, they're back in the cellar, and whether it's true or not, B, you know, she was, you know, making herself something to drink, and Billy walked over and basically said that he would see her later, that he, you know, was on his way out. And, you know, she's like, well, where are you going? And he ends up telling her that he had met a girl and he's going to meet this girl. And you can kind of see her face like, oh, okay. And then, you know, she ends up, as he turned to walk out, she ended up calling his name. And of course he was expecting her to stop him and say, you know, how she felt. But she ends up saying, you know, have a good time, which is obviously not what he wanted to hear. And not really what she wanted to say, but you know, it is what it is. So he left. And then she walked up and went over to talk to Leo, who's there. He got his own little corner now where he posted up and he's still reading through this book that they found in the attic. And so she went over and she sat next to him. And he found 2 photos in the book. One was of Dr. Watson. And then there was another photo that grabbed her attention of Dr. Watson and this woman. And so, of course, he's like, well, what's wrong? And she was like, oh, this is Alice. And then she was like, this is my mother.
Wait, that's my mom.
And so now it's like, okay, why is Watson in the photo with her mammy? And that's pretty much how this episode ends. I'm going to end this here because I know this video is going to be long as hell. So I'm going to see you guys. I'll talk to you guys in the next video.